This week almost ended with an Israeli strike in the heart of Beirut. The IDF prepared to hit Hezbollah targets in the Dakhya, the organization's fortified stronghold in Lebanon's capital. Residents received evacuation warnings. The forces were ready, and in Tehran, they immediately understood what was about to happen. Israel does not intend to give Hezbollah immunity just because diplomatic contacts are happening in the background. Now, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps immediately went into panic mode and began threatening to blow up the negotiations with the United States. And then Trump stepped in. The President of the United States spoke with Netanyahu. He applied pressure through the mediators in Lebanon and tried to stop this moment before it turned into a wider regional war. From Washington's perspective, a strike in the Dakhya was not only a Lebanese event, it could have blown up the contacts with Iran, the talks over the Strait of Hormuz, and the entire American attempt to create an image of calm after months of fire. But this is exactly where the problem begins. Because on paper, you can announce a pause, you can publish a statement, you can talk about quiet, but on the ground in southern Lebanon, the threat has not disappeared. Hezbollah is still there. After 2 years in which the IDF has been fighting the terrorist organization, it is still there, threatening Israel, not with the same power, not at the same level, but still very much there. Now, at this moment, the IDF continues to operate in southern Lebanon, in the village areas, along the access routes, in the spaces leading towards the Litani River and the control points, all in order to neutralize the terror infrastructure built by the Hezbollah terrorist organization and funded by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran. Israel is not only fighting today's fire, it is fighting what Hezbollah built for years for the day of command. Homes that were turned into weapons warehouses, stores built above underground infrastructure, villages that looked civilian from the outside, but inside served as military compounds. Children's rooms were behind a hollow wall, Cornet anti-tank missiles, RPGs, grenades, and ammunition were all hidden. This is the method of terrorist organizations. Hezbollah took southern Lebanon and turned it into a military zone inside a civilian population. It knew that on the day Israel hit a building, the world would first see the destroyed structure, and only afterwards, if at all, ask what was inside, hidden behind it. That's exactly why this current moment is so important, because the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran is trying to bring Lebanon into every negotiation. Now, from Tehran's point of view, Hezbollah is not just another organization. It is Iran's most important strategic asset on Israel's border. If Hezbollah is damaged too severely, Iran loses the ability to threaten Israel. That's why Iran wants time. Wants time to rebuild, time to move weapons, time to return commanders to the field, time to reorganize the drone, rocket, and anti-tank missile arrays and systems. Time to turn temporary ceasefire into a launching pad for the next war. But in northern Israel, time is not a diplomatic matter. It is a matter of life or death. A family in Kiryat Shmona can't return home if a Radwan force is sitting a few hundred meters away on the fence. A parent in Metula can't send a child to school if in every house across the border a launcher could be hidden. And a farmer in the Galilee can't work his orchards if one access road becomes an anti-tank trap. What we're seeing today in Lebanon, well, it didn't begin this week. It did not begin with a phone call between Trump and Netanyahu. It didn't begin with an Israeli threat against the Dakhya, and didn't even begin just in this last war. Hezbollah was built over decades as an Iranian army inside Lebanon, with money, weapons, training, doctrine, missiles, UAVs, anti-tank systems, underground infrastructure, and commando forces. Everything was built around a single idea. On the day Iran needs to unleash fire on Israel, the North will be the central point. On October the 7th, Israel was struck in the south, One day later, on October the 8th, Hezbollah opened the front in the north. Anti-tank fire, mortars, rockets, drones, tens of thousands of Israelis were evacuated from their homes. Entire communities became quiet, empty, exposed. For the first time, Israel found itself shrinking inward, not because of the weakness of its citizens, but because of a terrorist organization Iran built in order to hold an entire country under threat. And then Israel began dismantling that monster layer by layer. The pager operation broke the command and control system. Operatives and commanders were hit inside the organization's most sensitive spaces. Senior Radwan commanders were eliminated. Hassan Nasrallah, the longtime leader, was eliminated in his bunker in Beirut. Missile warehouses, launch sites, tunnels, and command centers were exposed and struck. But one of the most important lessons from this war is that a terrorist organization like Hezbollah does not disappear in a moment. No, because you can hit the head, you can break a system, you can create chaos, but a terrorist organization built deep inside a society as a foundation for children's education, inside politics, inside fear, does not disappear in a single day. That is why Israel cannot allow itself to return to the old formula. Round of fire, then a pause, then a few more years of imaginary quiet. Because that imaginary quiet is exactly what allowed Hezbollah to build up towards this war. That's why the episode you're about to watch now is so important, especially today. I'm Mati Shoshani. I had the privilege of taking part in the special documentary series Heroes of October 7th and Beyond, hosted by the one and only Erick Stakelbeck. In a moment, I want to show you we go deep into one of the most important arenas in this war. Hezbollah, Lebanon, Iran, Israeli intelligence, and the IDF forces that fought to push the threat away from the Galilee. Because in order to understand why Israel insists today on continuing to operate in southern Lebanon, you need to understand what Hezbollah planned to do yesterday. And in order to understand why another ceasefire without dismantling the infrastructure is not security, you need to see what was really beneath the homes, beneath the villages, and beneath the quiet the world had grown used to calling calm. Once again, I'm Mati Shoshani, and I want, right now, to present to you an episode about the front that will determine whether the residents of the North can truly return home and stay safely.
Hezbollah was the crown jewel in an empire of evil.
We took about 90 trucks of ammunition as the weapons out of that small village.
There is just chaos. Just chaos.
Opening the northern front on October 8th was the next move in a plan designed in Tehran to destroy Israel.
We were raced against time to deploy as fast as we can.
We eliminate Hassan Nasrallah in his bunker in Beirut.
The global media is flooded with images of countless Hezbollah terrorists with fingers blown off, ears blown off.
You have to think there was paranoia in the upper ranks of Hezbollah after this.
They do believe intelligence is art, it's not science.
I wouldn't want to imagine had Hezbollah enacted its plans to invade into Israel.
The northern front didn't light up by accident. On October 8th, one day after Hamas stormed across Israel's southern border and butchered 1,200 innocent civilians, Hezbollah opened fire on Israel. Anti-tank missiles, mortars, drones. It was the signal flare of a second front against Iran's most powerful proxy. So who is Hezbollah? Start here. It's an Iranian-built army inside Lebanon sworn to Israel's destruction and armed to the teeth by its masters in Tehran. Hezbollah was created in 1982 when Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, or IRGC, set up shop in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, training and unifying scattered Shiite militias into one force called the Party of Allah, or Hezbollah. They brought cash, doctrine, discipline, and wrapped it all in the so-called mission of resistance against Israel. From there, Hezbollah built a parallel power machine in Lebanon, a political party, a TV network called Al-Manar, and social services in heavily Shiite areas. Most importantly, Hezbollah built a formidable combat force shaped by battles with Israel and later on hardened in the killing fields of the Syrian civil war. Let's talk about Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's longtime leader. A master propagandist, he projected power with long speeches and carefully planned threats. Under Nasrallah, South Lebanon became one giant launch pad. His reign at the top of Hezbollah began in 1992 when he was just 32 years old. In 2006, under Nasrallah's direction, Hezbollah crossed into Israel, killing and kidnapping IDF soldiers. This sparked the Second Lebanon War. Israel hit back from the air, then pushed ground forces into South Lebanon. Hezbollah fired thousands of rockets at the north. After 34 days, a ceasefire was reached under UN Resolution 1701. In simple terms, 1701 said, stop shooting. Israel pulls back, the Lebanese army moves south, no Hezbollah weapons near the border up to the blue line, and all militias are supposed to disarm. On paper, that kept the rockets out. In practice, Hezbollah rebuilt and rearmed, waiting for the day to fulfill their most important mission, to bring Israel to an end. For decades, Iran kept the pipeline open, money, training, weapons, all flowing into the hands of Hezbollah. The result? A militia turned military with brigades, special units, and an arsenal that could reach every inch of Israel. We're talking well over 100,000 rockets and missiles, from short-range Katyushas to systems designed to reach deep into Israel, plus precision-guided munitions, swarms of armed UAVs, advanced anti-tank and anti-ship missiles, and an underground tunnel network built with North Korean know-how and IRGC engineering. At the same time, Hezbollah's elite Radwan units trained to cross the border and seize Israeli communities in the Galilee. The message became clear on October 8th. While Israel reeled from the Hamas massacre in the south, Hezbollah would see to it that the north would also bleed. This is the Iranian playbook, the ring of fire surrounding Israel on all sides. Gaza to the south, Hezbollah to the north, militias in Syria and Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen, all synchronized to stretch Israel's defenses and grind down its will in a long war of attrition. Lebanon was the crown jewel of that strategy, and Hezbollah was Iran's strongest proxy. Opening the northern front on October 8th wasn't just a spontaneous act of solidarity, it was the next move in a plan designed in Tehran to destroy Israel. When a second front opened in the north, Israel responded. It took time. The fighting in the north dragged on for over a year. Rockets, drones, anti-tank fire, towns uprooted, reserves stretched thin. For the first time in Israel's history, tens of thousands of civilians were evacuated from their homes. Entire communities were displaced. Towns and villages along the country's northern border emptied overnight, transforming the entire region into a landscape of ghost towns. But step by step, the IDF broke the monster's grip on the northern border. In a surgically executed, intelligence-led offensive, Israel activated a years-in-the-making beeper operation that had secretly planted explosive devices inside Hezbollah ranks. And what came next stunned the world. Israel eliminated Hassan Nasrallah, decimated his senior command, destroyed Hezbollah's missile stockpiles, and smashed their launch sites. The result was that Israel secured the north so that families can return safely to their homes. So where did Iran and its prized proxy Hezbollah go wrong? And how did Israel get it so right? I'm sitting down with Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, former IDF international spokesman and one of Israel's leading experts on Hezbollah, to break it all down.
Jonathan, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us. We want to give an overview here of the dramatic achievements of the IDF over the past nearly 2 years now, starting with October 7th, and it seems that the Iranian regime and its axis signed its own death warrant, in essence, on that day. Let's start with Hezbollah and the superior intelligence that Israel was able to build up inside Lebanon over a period of years that led to those stunning achievements.
I don't think that the Iranians really knowingly signed their death warrant. I think that their hubris got the better of them, and that one of their proxies got carried away with fantasies and really jumped the gun. Yahya Sinwar, the late terrorist leader of Hamas, he set into motion a chain of events that I'm sure that if the clever, cunning, strategic Iranians would have played out the scenario, they wouldn't have authorized Hamas to even start thinking about it if they would have imagined that 2 years after, they would find themselves in the probably weakest point that they've been in the last 25 years. It's still a work in progress, though, and I think that we can be somewhat satisfied with the current situation because the Iranian project of encircling Israel in a ring of fire and having Arab proxy forces aiming their guns, missiles, and rockets at Israeli civilians and having significant deterrence. You speak about Hezbollah, and I'll elaborate about the intelligence, but if we're honest, Hezbollah held deterring power over Israel, over Israeli decision makers, and it influenced decisions made by Israel not to engage the enemy, not to engage Hezbollah, not to really intercept and undermine its force building capabilities. And we found ourselves on October 7 surrounded by Iranian proxies with real teeth and real capabilities. It's important to understand exactly how powerful and how strong and deterring Hezbollah was. This was the crown jewel in an empire of evil of the Iranians. They were equipped with the best hardware that the Islamic Republic of Iran could provide, and Russian weapons and Syrian capabilities. All of that was front-loaded. We're talking about around $1 billion every year from Iran to Hezbollah that went to salaries, to procurement, to force buildup, to digging tunnels, and of course to providing weapons and ammunition to this organization. Artillery capabilities that are larger and more powerful than many European countries, including NATO members. We're not talking about a terror organization, we're talking about a non-state actor with state-level capabilities. And that's how big and powerful Hezbollah was. They bombarded our cities and they forced tens of thousands of Israelis out of their homes, and they effectively shrunk the size of Israel temporarily. And we've never had that, and I hope that we never again will witness and feel such a thing. But the fact that it did happen is something that we need to learn lessons from and make sure it never happens again, and to prevent it in terms of undermining enemy capabilities. That's something that we have to be very, very careful about. So regarding Hezbollah, as opposed to the situation in the south with Hamas, since 2006, we meant business and we collected intelligence knowing that Israeli lives depended on the quality of intelligence that we were able to collect when it comes to Hezbollah. So there was very little movement, activity, or anything done by Hezbollah that wasn't monitored, analyzed, classified, and understood by Israeli intelligence. And as we saw with the Beeper operation and other things, there were also deep penetrations into the holy of holiest of Hezbollah's machinery, knowing that it's going to take time until it comes into fruition, but if you do it well, you will have a joker or a trump card up your sleeve that can really be the surprise component. But if we go from the realm of James Bond and we look at hard military realities, what the IDF showed once the political echelon in Israel gave the green light and the go-ahead was that it was indeed prepared, had intel, had a good understanding of Hezbollah's assets, had a good understanding of where the personnel were, where they were hiding, where the first hiding place, the secondary hiding place, and the third hiding place of senior Hezbollah officials was. And that we had the ability to strike them. And I think there's a lot of things to learn from how Israel collected intelligence and prepared itself to fight Hezbollah. They went from 2006 being the leaders and the avant-garde, the forefront of jihadi Islamism and the standard bearer of fighting against Israel, what they call the Zionist endeavor, into being at the verge of being disarmed by the Lebanese state. And it happened thanks to Israeli fighting and intelligence collection, air force, ground forces, and a systemic dismantling of Hezbollah's capabilities. If we go back to really how things started, in the strategic operational planning of the IDF, the Beeper operation was never a standalone thing. It was designed to be exactly as it played out, as the first destabilizing move against Hezbollah that would send the organization into disarray in terms of its command and control and its offensive capabilities, and then expose Hezbollah's leadership to further Israeli attacks until they are decimated. And I'm happy to say that that is more or less how it played out.
You have to think there was paranoia in the upper ranks of Hezbollah after this, that Israel was able to infiltrate so deeply and have such incredible intelligence and pull this daring operation off.
I would dare to say, hoping that I won't be sound hubristic, I think that there's still a lot of effect and a lot of paranoia in all of the enemies of Israel, having seen that, having seen what Israel was able to do. And I think that a lot of the terrorists around the world, especially enemies of Israel, they really have to reassess how they operate. And I'm sure that they are thinking long and hard about it, looking at every electronic device, even the remote control for the air conditioner is suspect maybe to be penetrated by Israel.
No doubt. And we lead up from the Beeper operation, obviously, to the elimination, the dramatic elimination of Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the longtime leader of Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, the Radwan force, that elite military command. Talk about the significance of those two blows. How does the IDF pull that off?
So let's be frank here. As horrible as October 7 was, as devastating as it was to see what Hamas did to Israeli civilians, it could have been much, much worse had Hezbollah enacted its plans. You speak about the Radwan unit. People at home perhaps haven't heard that name before, but what people should understand about Radwan is that that was the tip of the spear, the best of Hezbollah's fighters, of their terrorists, that had access to the best training, the best weapons, the best facilities, and were busy day and night preparing to invade into Israel. They got a lot of battlefield experience on the ground from butchering other Muslims in Syria. That's how they started to actually form as a unit, and that's where in 2012, for the first time, the late Hassan Nasrallah came up with the bright idea of, okay, let's take the battlefield into Israel. And let's plan and build offensive capabilities that will allow Hezbollah to conduct raids, to breach into Israel, to encircle a community or a base, and then to overwhelm it with firepower and force in a certain area in order to kill and abduct and massacre and, of course, amplify everything in media in order to gain not only a victory on the ground, but a psychological victory against Israel. That, in general, was the plan, and the plan was called Conquering the Galilee. And the unit in charge of that, in terms of Hezbollah, was Radwan. That unit was really the biggest concern that Israel had, not only the fighters, but if you go up to northern Israel today, think about 80 miles of a front area. That's the size of the Lebanese-Israeli border, the so-called blue line. Now, there's about 30 Lebanese villages along that front area, except for 3 Christian villages that are in the central part of the area. All of them are Shiite villages. And all of those Shiite villages, they were meant to look like villages, but they were in fact military compounds with tremendous underground military infrastructure that was in place, ready to be used on the day of order when Hassan Nasrallah would order Radwan to attack and penetrate into Israel.
And you and I entered one of those tunnels
Indeed.
together, Jonathan.
Exactly.
And I'll never forget that experience.
Exactly.
Deep underground, heavily fortified. The advancement of those tunnels and the money that Hezbollah put into them was stunning.
Fortunately, we were able to detect those tunnels and undermine them. By the way, a good opportunity, again, as an Israeli, to say thank you to the US Congress, to AIPAC, for tunnel detection technology, which was developed together, US and Israel, but with US funding. That technology made it possible for Israel to detect the tunnels. We were able to dismantle all of the tunnels. The tunnel that you and I visited is one of 6 tunnels that Hezbollah dug. It was 24 stories deep. That tunnel was almost ready to be used by Hezbollah. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Hassan Nasrallah didn't give the okay. Radwan were not deployed. And instead of Radwan being the hunters, Radwan was hunted. The commanders were eliminated as they were convening in order to plan an attack or to execute an attack against Israel. Hezbollah leadership actually operated pretty much along the lines of the scenarios that Israeli intel officers assessed that they would. They thought that they would find safety and security underneath civilian buildings in the Dahya al-Janubiyya, the southern neighborhood of Beirut, and that's where they hid, but that was proven to be wrong. I wouldn't want to imagine what the consequences would have been if Hassan Nasrallah had made different choices and unleashed Radwan on Israel. We would have found ourselves in a very difficult situation. And once Israel decided to launch the Beeper operation, which set into motion a whole chain of events that effectively decapitated Hezbollah and really took the wind out of its sails, so to speak, you could say that a lot of the Middle East started to change, and it started to unravel in a very good way for the forces of good, democracy, civil rights, and in a bad way for the Iranians and the forces of darkness. I think the Syrian dictator, Bashar al-Assad, would not have fallen had it not been for the fact that the most important protector in terms of infantry and boots on the ground, Hezbollah, were taken out of the equation. But we should be cautious and always on guard and vigilant with our enemies, because Hezbollah is a grassroots organization that cleverly has spent a lot of time and energy working down and deep in Lebanese society amongst the Shiite population, and there's a very strong bond between Shiites in Lebanon and Hezbollah as an organization. That bond isn't going to be undone by military setbacks.
Jonathan, thanks so much. Great breakdown. This was a master class. We appreciate it, my friend. God bless.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Jonathan. Of course, always.
So what did the war on the northern border look like? Day after day, border communities emptied out. Families from towns like Kiryat Shmona, Metula, Shtula, and dozens of villages were ordered to evacuate. Tens of thousands of Israelis leaving homes, farms, and schools behind. hotels filled with evacuees, classrooms moved to temporary campuses, once bustling streets turned silent. Missile impacts scorched orchards and forests, set homes ablaze, ripped through factories and kibbutz dining halls. Sirens and intercepts became part of the northern soundtrack, while Air Force jets and artillery answered back across the blue line. Under UN Security Council Resolution 1701, passed in 2006 after the last major war between Israel and Hezbollah, no armed group is permitted to operate south of Lebanon's Litani River, a little over 18 miles north of Israel's border. Hezbollah not only repeatedly violated that UN resolution, its fighters turned the area into a terror stronghold. On the Lebanese side, civilians fled from the south to the north as Hezbollah embedded launchers and terrorists in and around villages. Inside Israeli homes far from the northern border, anxieties spiked. Supermarkets saw runs on bottled water, batteries, generators, and first aid kits. Families prepped safe rooms. Parents kept one eye on WhatsApp alerts and the other on their kids. Ask anyone from Haifa to Tel Aviv. There was a gnawing fear that this could be the spark for a full-scale showdown with Iran's most dangerous proxy. I'm sitting down with Colonel R., former Chief of Staff of the 769th Hiram Brigade, a man who saw the Northern War up close, day after day. Some stories are told in the light. Others are shared only from the shadows when speaking openly still carries weight.
R., thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about your background with the IDF?
I'm already in the reserved army about for 28 years in the Brigade of 769, Hiram.
What exactly does the Hiram Brigade do?
We are in charge of the Galil Panhandle. We defend the sector, the residents, communities.
Tell us about some of the unique challenges in your region in the north that the IDF faced before October 7th.
Well, before October 7th, the threat was quite imminent. We found quite a few of tunnels that were in the middle of the work that crossed the border from Lebanon into Israel. We were able to find those tunnels and destroy them, but if you would go down into a tunnel, you could see the work they would do. It took a long time, very slowly, so the plans were quite clear. They intended to attack and search communities and villages on the border through tunnels like they did in the southern communities. It would be quite a terrible scenario if they were able to deploy their plan as they wanted to.
They joined the fray, did Hezbollah, almost immediately. Talk about the immediate weeks in the wake of October 8th, when Hezbollah begins firing rockets.
Okay, I'll start actually on the morning of the 7th. It also surprised us, this attack in the southern border. So we're deployed only with 2 battalions in our vast sector. I reached the command post. I understand that Hezbollah may attack immediately. I send out a WhatsApp to all the reserved officers, get into your cars with a bag and get up now. So we actually mobilize all the staff and all our reserved battalions. So I can tell that we turned into a race against the time, because Hezbollah, before the 7th, is deployed, not fully, but deployed on the border. It has capabilities, has its weapons, ammunition. It can do an attack, an insurgent, a raid immediately if it wants to. We understand that Hezbollah doesn't understand what's happening also in the southern border, so
Even they were taken
by surprise also. So
the plan was a coordinated attack eventually, right? With that entire Iranian ring of fire, perhaps.
Hezbollah was taken by surprise. So we were a race against time before they got into a decision if they are joining or going on to a full board attack. We have to deploy as fast as we can. We mobilized our reserve battalions. They got into the emergency units. So by evening, I had a company in every community or city or village in the border, and we were already deployed quite strongly. So when Hezbollah had to take the decision if they're joining or not joining, or if they're going into attack. We were already deployed quite strongly. They did not go into a full board attack. I think that is one of the successes we had in that order. The first few days, we still had the option of a full board attack of Hezbollah. Two things we had to take into consideration. First of all, is what all the communities and residents that were there. So one of the decisions was to evacuate them, which was not a simple decision. All the communities and villages that are on the border, and at the end, of course, also the city Kiryat Shmona, which has 25,000 residents. We evacuated them all, and we every day put in more and more battalions into the sector. So after about a week or so, we are deployed 12 battalions in our sector. Each one has their own sector. It was quite hectic, I would say, for the first few weeks. But after the first few weeks, we're deployed strongly, ready for the next.
Hamas dangerous, Hezbollah even stronger in many ways. Talk about the differences and the unique challenges you faced in the north.
Hezbollah is a well-organized military operation. 7,000 soldiers of Radwan, the special troops that their main purpose is to conquer the Galil Panhandle and just go in and catch the communities. Their infrastructure was unbelievable. In the villages itself, on the borders, the amounts of artillery they had. At beginning, they deployed all their anti-tank squads around the border. That means that we cannot move freely in our sector. There were a lot of roads that we flagged them red. If you go on them with a jeep or even walk, you would get a missile. We're in defense for about, I'd say, a year. We're slowly targeting Hezbollah posts, targeting Hezbollah soldiers, making them go back. For the past year that we were in defense, we hit quite a lot of its forces and infrastructure, and we're not able to surveil or detect any Hezbollah warriors. We're in a surveillance gap because they went so much back.
Back from the border.
Back from the border. They went from the first village back to the second village, even further down. The beauty of the reserved army is that we decided that we're going to build a drone unit from nothing, from scratch. We take a soldier, we say, listen, we have a surveillance gap, we need drones, go study the subject. He goes, studies, finds people that do it in the civilian life, know how to fly drones, bring them, we train them, get equipment. 2 weeks after that, we have a drone unit that knows how to fly them up. They did a brilliant job. We found the Hezbollah posts that were back, that we didn't see, that were after the terrain, after the mountains, which we had no eyesight with them. And so they did a brilliant job. And I mean, that's the beauty of the reserved army, I'd say. It's capability to learn and function fast and build things. So this was a Sisyphic year.
September 2024, the IDF definitely ups the game. The Beeper operation, which has become legendary, and then the elimination of essentially the entire leadership of the Radwan force, Hassan Nasrallah. I think many expected a big counterattack, word that they had massive arsenal, and they reacted, but not to the extent that many expected. And then the IDF goes in on the ground. How challenging was that, the ground operation into southern Lebanon to root out and push back Hezbollah?
I'll start with an example, a village on the border, Kfar Kile. Hezbollah over the years turned that village into a fortress, I would say. Any house we went into, we would find or a weapons cache, or a lookout post, or an infrastructure, a tunnel that would take from a house to a post that you can fire from their missiles. We took about 90 trucks of ammunition and weapons out of that small village. Now, when we go house to house, you can go into a children's room. Beautiful. There are a bed and toys. You knock on the wall, you understand that it's hollow, you break down the wall, and inside are cornet missiles, RPGs, grenades. It's on the border, and as we saw what happened in the southern communities, that could have happened also in our border. So the plans they had, you can just see it when you go into the village and walk from house to house and go inside. So all those infrastructures, there are things that we destroyed, and we're not going to allow them to build that kind of thing again on the border, on those villages that bring such a threat to the communities on the Israeli side.
Talk about where Hezbollah is now and your concerns about them now, what kind of threat they pose to the Jewish state and the world at this moment.
The imminent threat of a raid or an attack on a community, on residents, is something that we now eliminated. That is not on the table. When the Iran 12-day attack happened, we mobilized all our battalions up in one day. We were sure they are going to attack. That's what they were built for all these years. When that didn't happen, we understand there was a major change in Hezbollah, at least in the military aspect.
Stunning that they did not get involved during the 12-day war, because Iran built them up for years. In case Israel did strike Iran's nuclear weapons facilities, well, we'll unleash Hezbollah on you, and it never happened. It was stunning. Do you have a message for the world about the righteousness of the IDF's cause?
I'm going to give this example of Kfar Kileh, which was a civilian village. There were doctors there and schools and mosques. One of the houses we go into, there is a cornet missile that looks straight into the village of Kfar Yuval, into Israel. Now, one of those missiles was fired and killed a soldier and a civilian in Kfar Yuval. They were having breakfast in their house. And when you're looking from the village into Israel, when you see it with your eyes, it's really unbelievable. We, as the Army, the Brigade 769, are committed to the residents, to the communities. We share the same goal. We want to raise the children, we want to plant trees, fruit trees, and live in peace in that terrain. And I think that's the message that I want to give.
Last question. When you look back at the campaign against Hezbollah, has there been a particular moment for you on a personal level that affected you? Just something emotionally powerful for you as you're defending the state of Israel against an existential threat?
There were a lot of fires in the sector. When you fire motors in the summer, with the winds and the weather, fires erupt. A lot of orchards were burned, forests were burned. I'm walking in a patrol in an orchard, and it's all burnt, but between the burnt trees and everything, you see small green sprouts coming out from the ground, growing up, and I took a picture of that. And you understand there is hope. I mean, everything's going to grow back, be green, and life will come back to that region, so that's also right on.
And it is such a beautiful region. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thanks for all you're doing. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Israel is a small country. No gold to mine, no oil to pump. Its wealth is its people. When we return, we're diving into the brilliant minds behind Israel's world-class intelligence and hearing from the thinkers who outsmarted enemies, brought down Hezbollah, and turned the northern war Israel's way.
Yair Pinto's branch in Dimona was hit. After a direct missile strike in the area, the building suffered severe structural damage and is now completely unsafe to use. What was once a place of warmth, of dignity, and daily meals is now filled with broken glass, debris, and instability. More than 470 residents were displaced in this attack, and thousands of homes were affected. And right in the middle of it all, Yair Pinto, a lifeline for so many, was deeply impacted. Inside the building, ceilings are at risk of collapse. Electrical and plumbing systems have been destroyed. Entire sections of the facility need to be rebuilt from the ground up. And yet, the meals haven't stopped. Even without a building, even in crisis, the team continues to provide food every single day to those who depend on it. But emergency operations are not enough. We need to rebuild, not just to restore what was lost, but to bring this place back to life. A fully functioning, dignified space where people can once again receive meals with respect, with consistency, and with care. Government support may cover part of the damage, but it will not restore the heart of this place. That depends on us. If you want to stand with the people of Dimona, If you want to help rebuild this place of hope, we invite you to give today. Visit charityinisrael.org and be part of restoring Meir Panim, because together we can rebuild.
Israel is a tiny nation ringed by hostile armies and vastly outnumbered. So it built the sharpest edge it could, people who think faster and see farther. And with them, Israel forged a world-class intelligence machine. Because from the early days, intelligence wasn't a luxury, it was survival. In 1966, Operation Diamond persuaded an Iraqi pilot to land his MiG-21 in Israel, giving the West a Soviet-made fighter jet to dissect and counter. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel launched Operation Focus, striking airfields and command posts early in the morning and smashing most of Egypt's air force on the ground within hours, seizing the skies on day one. The list goes on. In 1976, the Entebbe rescue, also called Operation Thunderbolt, saw Israeli commandos fly 2,500 miles overnight to Uganda, hit the terminal in a 90-minute assault, and bring home more than 100 hostages through planning, deception, and speed. Then in 2018, Mossad teams slipped into a guarded warehouse near Tehran and hauled out over 100,000 top-secret documents that exposed the true scope of Iran's nuclear weapons program. Those same methods, years of patient penetration and preparation, then minutes of decisive action, set the stage for the elimination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in late 2024. Israeli intelligence mapped Hezbollah's underground headquarters, buried deep under Beirut's southern suburb. Then, in a single, perfectly timed airstrike, they collapsed it, killing Nasrallah and his senior command, shocking Hezbollah and the world. This is Israel's advantage. Brilliant minds turning intelligence into outcomes. And today, Mati Shoshani is sitting down with one of those brilliant Israeli minds.
You are Lieutenant Colonel J. You're responsible for intelligence in Israel's Northern Command.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you explain to myself and everyone else who doesn't know what that means, what it is you actually do?
So in my current position, I'm in charge of several dozens of young officers and soldiers. And together we are responsible for creating the entire intelligence daily analysis, which we provide to our senior commanders and to our forces on the ground.
Tell me what a day of intelligence looks like.
Different kind of data comes into our systems from various different sources, whether it's human intelligence, technological sources, and other sources that we have. We have to describe the entire image in order for our senior commanders and the forces on ground to make the best decision based on our intelligence. The relationship between a decision maker and an intelligence officer, I can say it's a very delicate one. It's based on my commander and his trust that I know what's important for him to know. I do believe intelligence is art, it's not science, meaning that I haven't seen any kind of supercomputer which is able to do what human beings are doing regarding intelligence.
We're talking about Northern Command. And on October the 8th, our greatest enemy within this neighborhood, which is Hezbollah, the biggest proxy, the best funded proxy, the strongest proxy of the Iranian Islamic regime, they also joined the war. So what happens to you? Where are you on October the 8th? And what does Northern Command sort of see that day develop into?
On October 8th, I was in the general HQ of the IDI, of the Israel Defense Intelligence. My main goal was actually to understand when, how, and if Lebanon's Hezbollah is going to operate against Israel. On October 8th, in the morning, several dozens of rockets were fired to Mount Dov. We retaliated. Lebanese Hezbollah fired several rockets again, and then it actually ended. These rocket launchers actually proved that Israel is willing to retaliate no matter what happens in other places, such as Gaza. We are standing strong in the north. If Lebanese Hezbollah decides to open a new front, we would operate in this new front. After those fire rockets, we did see something that troubled us. A large number of Radwan operatives moving closer and closer to the border with Israel. They had this grand plan of conquering, of infiltrating into Israel. They moved from north of the Litani River to the south, which means they are getting ready for something. This is the reason why the senior commanders of the IDF made the decision to evacuate the Israeli population close to the border.
We made this very, very dramatic U-curve. And if the beginning of the war was, how did we not know about Gaza? It continued with a very long series of an upward tick of, I can't believe we knew this about Hezbollah command. I can't believe we pinpointed Hassan Nasrallah. I can't believe the pager operation. I can't believe, and the list goes on and on and on and on. What level of knowledge do we have about that person, Nasrallah or someone similar to him? What does he think we know about him? And what do we truly know about what he's doing?
When Lebanese Hezbollah operatives, specifically the senior leaders, were in their position for 20, 25, even 30 years, you get pretty familiar with what their daily routine looks like. The Northern Command, the entire intelligence community, we were focused on Lebanese Hezbollah. A day after the 2006 war ended, we actually started the events in Lebanon with 20 years or so of knowledge. And yeah, there were huge successes. I should mention that some of them are intelligence-based successes. Some of them are only based on the courage and the spirit of the forces, of the fighters, of the troops on ground.
Let's talk about one of these big operations, the pager attack. I'll paint a picture. There's a day, and all of a sudden, Hezbollah operatives in markets and stores and command rooms all over Lebanon take pagers that are vibrating in their pockets or in their vest pouches, and those little pagers start blowing up. And they eliminate a lot of the, let's call the tactical commanders of Hezbollah, along with several others who were not yet eliminated, many others more. And the global media is flooded with images of countless Hezbollah terrorists, let's call them by name, in hospitals, in medical care, with fingers blown off, ears blown off, deceased, etc. An unimaginable blow, one, to their ego, two, to their understanding of how far we penetrated into their organization. What does the day after look like for Hezbollah?
The day of what is known as the pager attack or the pager operation comes after a day that Israel actually declares a new target for the war, which is to bring Israeli civilians back to their homes in the north.
Yeah.
The pager operation occurs, and a day afterwards is the walkie-talkie operation.
Yeah.
Approximately 24 hours afterwards. There is just chaos in Lebanese Hezbollah. It's not safe in their eyes to speak with your commander. You are probably wounded, and this chaos is actually crossing the entire organization, meaning that it takes place both on the senior leadership and on the field operation. 2 days afterwards, we eliminate senior leaders of Radwan unit, the head of operations of Lebanese Hezbollah, Ibrahim Akil, and several others of his senior commanders and senior allies. Several days later, we have a very successful strike against the entire fire arsenal of Lebanese Hezbollah. Several days later, we eliminate Hassan Nasrallah in his bunker in Beirut. What is known as the pager attack or the pager operation actually marks the beginning of a series of strikes against Lebanese Hezbollah, which took place up until October 1st, 2024, when we started our field deployment. At the time, when you and I are speaking, Israeli forces are actually free to operate almost anywhere in Lebanon. It's something that didn't happen before October 7th. Nowadays, we can operate wherever and whenever we find a threat which we want to eliminate.
So I have a huge question mark in my head. They had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where they caught us with our pants down. And everyone, including the IDF, was waiting for them to take action, and it didn't come.
About a week after October 7th, give or take, the previous leader of Lebanese Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, had a speech. It was broadcasted all over Lebanon. The main thing that he said in his speech is that October 7th, of course, it's a blessed operation and so on, but it's a Palestinian issue. He actually told them, you took your chance, you did what you did, we are not with you. You are on your own. I think that what happened on October 7th and October 8th is that the element of surprise was actually disrupted by the Palestinians in Gaza, by Hamas. Lebanese Hezbollah actually had to make new plans in order to adjust the new situation.
I know what I know about Hezbollah. I'm interested to hear your perspective. Who is this fighting force that we've been told about for a generation at this point?
We always describe Lebanese Hezbollah operatives in different fields, fighters, logistics, and so on, as people who are operating from an extreme religious-based incentive. They knew that they were going to get killed, and yet they were operating under a deep understanding of Shiite belief that Israel should be wiped off the map. Israel and Jews can't live in peace in the Middle East. In the state of Israel shouldn't exist. And it's a deep belief. It's not just something they are indoctrinated during their practices. It's from school. When we made our deployment into Lebanon, we did find many school books. And in many of those school books, we did find one main agenda, that America is the big enemy, Israel is the small enemy. And this is something that they teach from young age.
How much of a footprint do they still have after this war?
Lebanese Hezbollah was not completely destroyed. The Iranians are still trying to rebuild this organization that they put billions of dollars throughout the years, and they didn't give up on this organization. Moderate groups in Lebanon are becoming more and more prominent all over Lebanon and even closer to the Israeli border. Lebanese forces are actually going and seizing and capturing weapons and other equipment from Lebanese Hezbollah. It's something that was never done before. Nowadays, I think that the people of Lebanon, most of them, they do understand that stability and even prosperity is something that's possible. But again, only time can tell whether stability is something that's possible.
Final question for you. How do we avoid another October 7th catastrophe?
I think what October 7th actually taught everyone in the intelligence is don't try to predict the future. Try to think of all the different outcomes and the different futures possible. It helps me every day to fire up my imagination and try to think about the worst case scenario and try to think how do we get to this worst case scenario and now what we need to find out and what we have to do to avoid this kind of scenarios.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Jay, for opening up this very secretive world to our viewers.
Thank you.
In Israel, men and women don't live like most of us in the U.S. or the rest of the West. At 18, young Israelis enlist. Men for about 3 years, women for 2. No gap year detours for parties and world travel. No straight to campus. Service comes first. Talent and training are the tools. Covenant and calling are the flame. That's why, even in the hardest nights, hope lives here. Stay with us, because next time we're stepping into the wellspring of that hope, the incredible innovation that keeps rising from this land, especially in medicine. Discoveries forged through hardship, refined in war, and going on to bless not just Israel, but the world.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.